I'm Alana Burke, CEO of Your Life's Workshop, coach to entrepreneurs and solopreneurs across dozens of industries, and host of Good Business. With nearly 20 years' experience helping hundreds of clients create profitable, ethically driven, and sustainable businesses based on their life's work, I'm here to teach you how to do great work, make great money, and make a positive impact without feeling like you need a shower afterwards. Hi there, welcome to the Good Business Podcast. Today's episode is all about the one thing in your business and your leadership development that you absolutely can't compromise on. And to elaborate on that a little bit, today we're going to talk about package development. We're going to talk about how to deliver on your promises. We're going to talk a little bit about pricing. And most of all, we're going to talk about how to muster up the guts to not mess up the thing that matters the most, which is how you deliver what you actually offer. See, there's all kinds of things in your business that you can bend on and still succeed. You can compromise your ethics. You can bend on social media. You can bend on design. You can bend on networking. They can all involve subtle shifts in how you think you want to do things versus how you actually need to do them, right? Like, you can follow all the directions, you can follow all the mandates, all the blog posts, all the lessons, all the everything, right? And some of those might feel really resonant for you, and some of them might really not. And there's a lot of opportunity for deviation, right? From what you actually at your core, feel like is the right thing. And we make these subtle compromises all the time, right? Especially in our business and when we're starting out, and we're in that stage where we don't know what we don't know, which, lasts for a long time for a lot of people. And if you're, good about what you do and want to keep learning, then you're going to kind of always feel that tension, right? So today we want to talk about like the thing that is the most important thing, the thing that you can't afford to bend on. And it's probably one of the hardest things to not. So when I talk to clients, I work on this very same thing, like all the time. This is something that comes up all the time. Even for my more experienced clients, it comes up for me sometimes. So for example, like what we're going to start off talking about is actually offer design. That's the core of where we're at today is we're talking about how you actually deliver on the promises that you make to clients. And when I say clients, it's like, that's kind of a generic term for your clients in this sense. Could be the people that work for you. It could be the people who are paying you. It could be the people who are your audience if you're a content producer. It's basically saying, when you create a brand, you're creating a promise. You're saying, I promise that I can deliver on X. And a lot of people don't deliver on X. They overpromise or they underdeliver, one of the two, right? Or they make a promise that's actually not what they want to be promising. They make a promise that's more like a marketing promise, right? Where, it says something like, you can have anything you want and I'll show you how. That is not an accurate promise. That is not a thing that anybody can give you. It's not a promise that can be made and fulfilled by the service provider, right? There's nobody who can do that. You can't have anything you want. Sorry, I have news for you. You can't have anything you want, and there's nobody who can show you how to have that. So just, notice that, right? But when you're creating your thing, whatever your thing is, you have to figure out a way to both come up with an accurate promise and deliver on it. So there's a couple different ways to do this. Really, when I say that, I don't want to be so flippant about it, because there's two ways to develop what you offer, and only two. The first is, actually, let me back up for a second. Both of these things are based on something that you have to establish before you can actually get to the offer design, and that is, what's the problem that you're solving, right? We all know this, that we think about like, okay, somebody needs something, how can I deliver it? So we think about, most people's approach to developing things is like, what am I good at? What do other people in my industry do? How do they deliver on it? How do they think about it? And we go through this, like these mental gymnastics that everybody goes through the same thing. And it's the approaching your product, your service, your business as what will the market bear? You're thinking about, okay, so I'm a good writer. I'll be a copywriter. Well, what can I make money at copywriting? I can write websites, or I can ghostwrite blog posts, or, you think about it from the direction of the actual logistical output, and based on what you think people will pay for, what you think the rest of the industry is doing. And we don't often start with ourselves. So that's what I'm going to get to in a second here. So that's kind of where everybody starts, is in that headspace. It's a very reactive headspace. It's not very proactive. So the two ways that I was discussing that is okay, now you know what the problem is. Now you kind of have a sense of it. So now you're going to think about one of two things. You're going to pick one of two lanes. The first lane is you base it on what people want. Here, I'm going to figure out a problem, and I'm going to figure out how I can solve the problem. Which is, viable, totally. But it's not sustainable long term for a number of reasons, and we're going to get to that in a second. The second way is based on how you deliver on your promise. So you make a promise, and you design your offer around how you can best deliver on it. And that's the core of what we're talking about today. So delivering on your promise is pretty much the most important thing that you can do in your business. And that's something that weirdly is almost an afterthought in how people develop their offers these days, because we develop offers based on salability, based on trends, based on all these externalized factors that have absolutely not one fucking thing to do with doing something really, really well. So obviously, the name of the podcast, Good Business, right? This is how you do business well. This is how you develop evangelists. This is how you do things that matter. This is how you find fulfillment. This is how your logistical work becomes your life's work. This is the difference between having a few people who kind of say oh yeah, they were okay. I worked with them and I guess, what they did for me was fine. And having people who go, oh my God, they did such an amazing job for me, and they tell everybody they know about you, which is the goal, right? We need people who talk about us. That's the fundamental way that you're going to get clients. It's the fundamental way that you're going to get promotion. It's the fundamental way that you're going to be seen as a leader. And that's the core of this, right? That this is beyond just delivering. It's about how do you want to lead? And do you have the guts to do that? So let's break this down a little bit. First, I want to go back before we get to the really juicy stuff here, the fun stuff that I was just discussing. I want to go back to how people do this wrong. So we're going to talk about that first, of all the ways in which people do this wrong. All the ways in which people develop businesses, develop service offerings, and develop leadership platforms incorrectly and ineffectively. So some of these, I want to point out, you can get very successful doing things the wrong way. That's well known, right? You can be unethical as shit. You can burn people. You can undercharge, overcharge. You can sell things you're not good at. You can do all of those things and make great money. That's the truth. I wish it wasn't that way. I wish people saw through it. I wish doing things the wrong way meant that you weren't going to be successful, but that's not the reality we fucking live in. We live in a world where you can do everything wrong and still do okay. Now, the problem with that, though, is that we're in a new space of business, right? We're in a democratized world where anybody can start a business, and that's magical. It's also really fucking dangerous. It means that there's a lot of people doing this who don't give two fucking shits about creating something that is better than what the business world has been before. It means that we still use words like target marketing, which, think about that for a second, right? Think about the word target marketing. It means that you're literally painting a target so that you can shoot something at something else, right? That's what a target is for. And it has this sort of inherent inhumanity to it. And it totally takes out the very idea that you are a human being selling something useful to another human being. It sterilizes it. it makes you forget that you've made a promise. It makes you forget that there's a real person on the other end. It makes you forget that you're separating someone from their hard-earned money that they could probably use for something else. So I never, ever talk about target marketing, and we'll definitely cover what I talk about instead on another episode. But today, how that ties in here is in service offerings, right? In how you actually deliver what you deliver. So we're talking logistics. So I'm gonna break that down a little bit. So when you think about delivering on your promise, it's kind of the old adage of like, you know, when you fly, you have to put your own mask on first if there's an emergency before you put it on other people. And I know that's not a new idea. I'm not the first one to say that for sure. But it's a really good analogy, so I'm sticking with it. So in order to deliver well, in order to deliver anything well, you have to be standing on a solid foundation. That's basically what that means. You can't save someone while dangling from a tightrope. You can't save someone or help someone while you don't have your basic systems in place that allow you the time and energy and bandwidth to do the work that you most need to do. You can't function that way, at least not sustainably. So now a lot of us, when we first start out, it's like that's not even optional, right? Like we have to dangle and try to help at the same time. We're not, we have to kind of fake it till we make it, right? And that's okay. Like this is not an episode where I want to beat up people who are hustling and doing the job of 6 people, and like that's not it at all. We all have to do that. I did it. Sometimes I still do, right? Like there is a necessity to scramble sometimes. There's a necessity to both perform and be exhausted. That's not what I'm talking about. This is not a self-care conversation at all. There's plenty of podcasts out there to teach you how to take care of yourself. This probably isn't one of them. I'm here to teach you how to take care of your business and take care of the people who pay you. So what we're talking about today is the difference between letting your client dictate how many sessions they want with you versus telling them how many sessions they need with you. It's like, does the dog wag the tail or the tail wag the dog? Now, this came up today by happenstance because I had a client call earlier today, and this is a long-term client that I've worked with for many years, and she's heard this a lot of times and is probably going to laugh and chuckle at this. that she's been developing a new offering based on a new skill that she worked very, very hard to get and is continuing to work at gaining and adding to her service offerings. And she's offering a workshop. Now, we talked a lot about how to frame her workshop, and to figure out how to frame it, she was coming at it from the standpoint of like, well, how do people do workshops, in-person workshops? We were kind of like comparing it to things like going to yoga classes, that kind of thing. Like this is an in-person, it's a physical thing that she's doing. I'm not going to give it away because it's, privacy and all that good stuff. But she wanted to fill the workshop with, 8 to 12 people, and was trying to figure out how often she needed to have classes in order for it to stick, right? It's a whole new skill. It's something that people have not done before. And it's something that she's like introducing a new group of people to a modality that isn't something anyone there has ever done before. So the first question I always ask when somebody asks me about service design is, what do you need to do to deliver on your promise? And that is the core of everything today. What do you need to do to deliver on your promise? How much time do you need? How much connection do you need? How much community do you need? How much money do you need? Everything should come from that one simple question. So I'm going to say it one more time. Anytime you're developing a service, anytime you're developing anything, think about the promise that you've made to the people who sign up. And then think about what are the conditions you need to deliver on that promise. That's the core of today's lesson. So for her, she was thinking this is a habit-based modality. It's something that requires you to practice a lot. not exactly something that, in Western society, in big cities, are we really all that accustomed to, right? Most human beings are not great at practice or patience or any of that stuff, right? So we determined that 2 sessions a week, that she needed to get a bunch of people together in a space outside of their home to leave their house and come to a location where she could teach them this twice a week in order for it to stick. So we developed this months and months ago. And today we were chatting about her sign-up numbers because it's about to start, right? She's gone through the whole launching process and it's about to start. And she kind of made an offhanded comment that she said, well, it's all data. Like I have a few people signed up and it's all going really well. And, people are complaining about it, not being able to make it to every single one and all of that. And, I've made that really okay for people and it totally is. And, and maybe next time I won't do it twice a week. And I said, whoa. You got to do it twice a week, right? Isn't that what you represented? That this material will not stick unless you have people there twice a week so that they're getting a serious amount of regularity and connection with the other people in the group, that feels critical. And she kind of had this moment of like hemming and hawing a little bit like, wait, but what if I don't get as many signups? And I said, fine, then you don't get as many signups. That's okay. Because if you have 10 people who can come once a week, but you end up with 10 people who barely learned anything at the end, they're never going to come back for the next session. And they're never going to tell anybody how transformative or wonderful it was. And they're not going to create relationships with the people there. And they're not going to come every time because there's no impetus to do so, because they're not going to see the results that delivered on your original promise. Am I right? And she said, yeah, probably. I said, so wouldn't it be better if you only got 3 people who could come 3 days a week or who could come twice a week and who were super engaged and had life-altering results and had a deep and transformative experience? Not only are they going to sign up next time, they're going to tell everybody they know that they had a transformative experience. So this is like, it all feeds into like the fact that, numbers lie, right? The volume of the people that sign up for your thing is irrelevant. It really is, because if you're delivering, it doesn't matter. If you're delivering on your promise and creating something amazing, then the number of people that sign up matters less and less and less. It just means that you're on a longer road. It means that you have to be a little bit more patient, but it means that you're creating something that you deeply care about and that the people who participate in will deeply care about. It means that you are keeping your promise. And wouldn't that be an amazing thing if people started keeping their marketing promises? Like, how many people do you know? Like, how many newsletters have you signed up for that were garbage, right? That promised you the moon and the stars and all the wonderful updates in the world and a transformative business experience, or they were going to create clarity and confidence and cash flow and all these magical, wonderful words that we all see so often. Wouldn't it be great if they actually did? Right? Think about it for a second. Oh, wait. Can you think of one person, one newsletter, one offer that you felt like actually delivered on the promise it offered, that made you sign up for the thing or buy the thing? Like, think about anything. It could be, a bag of chips at the grocery store. It could be a new stereo system. It could be, it could be a new course that you took online. I don't know. Pick a thing, anything. Pick the last thing you bought. Think about it for a second. Did it deliver? Did it deliver on the thing it promised you it would? Was it the most delicious bag of chips that you'd ever had in your life? Was it the best cup of coffee in the entire world? Was it the most amazing course that taught you things you had never seen before? Did it actually help you sell? Did it teach you marketing? Did it show you how to open up the stars and get 1 million Pinterest followers? I don't know. Whatever it was. Did it deliver? Or do you find yourself kind of going, meh, I learned a little. The chips were okay. The coffee was all right. That's way more common. We live in mediocrity soup, people. Like, that's that is the way of the world right now. We live in a world where we're lied to so often we don't even notice anymore. We're made promises constantly that we don't even notice our promises. Every marketing message you read, that's a promise, right? And nobody's policing them. Nobody's telling businesses, companies, brands that they need to be more honest. Nobody. Like, false advertising is not really a thing. Like, everybody does false advertising. I promise you, buying a red Mazda is not going to help you get laid. Like, it's just not. But the promise is there, right? That's the objective correlative of their marketing. That's the lie they tell you. And they want you to believe the lie because they can't deliver on the truth. So be the company that delivers on the truth. Be the business that delivers on the truth. Be the leader who delivers on the truth. Wouldn't that be a trip? Like, I can tell you pretty honestly that all of my clients, everybody I work with, has an experience of finding and exploring their life's work. And I totally challenge listeners, I challenge past clients to call me on that. If you didn't have an experience like that with me, say so. I'm sure there's one or two out there who think I'm the devil. That's probably totally the case. that I'm sure I probably shouldn't say 100%. Let's say I've got a 95% success rate because I only deliver on what I promise. I don't color outside the lines. I make sure that I only promise what I know I can deliver. What a concept, right? Like, and I'm not here to toot my own horn because I think that should be the lowest bar that anybody should set for themselves if you're going to go into business, especially if you want to help people, especially if you're doing something that is, you're not selling widgets, right? Like, if you're selling widgets, you're probably not listening to this podcast, right? If you actually want to make a difference in the world, if you actually want to do a good job at life, at business, you have to do things completely differently. You have to turn the rules on their head and you have to stop listening to shitty, craptastic advice from marketers. Because marketers are teaching you one thing: how to sell shit to people who don't want it. Right? That's what marketing is. How do you trick people into buying something? How do you trick more people into buying something? How do you trick even more people into buying more things? What if instead you focused all your energy and attention on doing excellent, excellent, excellent work and delivering on your promise and only making promises you can keep? Like, wouldn't that change the face of business? I personally think that's possible. I think that there's a handful of people out there that are doing it. I think that there's people out there that care so deeply about their work that they're unwilling to compromise. And I think there's people out there who are starting to pay attention to the fact that we make compromises that we don't even realize. And what I mean by that is when you're learning marketing and when you're learning how to, quote unquote, do business, you don't even know what you don't know, right? You don't know that the advice you're reading is going to create an unethical result. You don't know yet that doing things in a certain way is going to end up being manipulative or cause shame. I see good marketers who are good human beings who just flat don't fucking think hard enough about what they're advising people to do. They create scarcity. They create shame. They create a dynamic that sets people up for failure. And I fucking had it. I have friends that fall into that category that I think would listen to this and cringe because they would realize that they do those things, right? We're never going to run out of ebooks, people. Like, the idea of creating urgency in marketing removes agency in marketing. Creating urgency, creating a situation where people feel like they have a gun to their head to buy your thing means that your thing isn't delivering on its promise. Period. Because if it was delivering on its promise, your conversion rates would be high enough just on the reputation of what you offer alone. So I know this is true. I know this is true because my business has functioned on it for 11 years. I have a very small list. And someday somebody's going to listen to my archives and go, oh, how funny, how quaint, right? Because, I'm working on growth right now, but I've spent 11 years not growing. Now, isn't that a funny idea? I focus on the person in front of me. I focus on the client that I know I can help, and that's created a thriving referral pipeline that's kept my business stable, growing, and a wait list for most of that time. I don't worry about list growth. I don't worry about metrics. I don't worry about SEO. I don't worry about any of that. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't. Don't get me wrong. Those aren't bad things. This isn't a judgment on that. It's that I know for me, for the business I wanted to create, I'm more than willing to help one person at a time. That has been my way up until this point. Now I started a podcast so that I can help more people because I have more experience and I'm more interested now because I've watched over the past 10 years, I've watched the tide not change. I've watched it get worse. I've watched more people enter the marketing space, the business coaching space, the education space, all doing permutations of the same crap, the same garbage, the same target marketing, develop your standard evergreen stuff, develop your sales funnel, develop this, and everybody's giving you the same rules and they're giving you the same tools to, manipulate your audience basically into buying more stuff. I've seen really brilliant people say things like, make sure when you're selling something that you always have something in your back pocket to sell them next. A fucking terrible idea. Can you just think about that for a second? Instead of focusing on delivering on what they've already bought from you, you've got this thing in the back of your mind that you're looking for an opening to sell to them, to pry more money out of their wallet. Why not focus instead on doing a really, really good job? So to do a really, really good job, you have to throw the rule book out. So this is where we're going to talk about the actual physical service offering development a little bit. So I have a handful of people that I look at that I think are really, really good at this. Now, one of them has a really interesting offer. He's probably one of the most unique brands I've seen out there. And I use him as an example a lot. And I'm not going to name him because I don't want to brutalize his name. I'll put it in the show notes that you can read later because I don't know how to say it. This is somebody I've been connected to for years, but he has a really, really long name and I don't know how to say it and I don't want to mess it up. So I'm going to stick it in the show notes. For now, we'll say he has a really fantastic and fascinating brand. He has an approach to marketing from a perspective of urban shamanism, mysticism, and Batman kind of thrown in there. Right? He's entirely unique and entirely embodied as himself. And I find that wildly compelling, and so do a lot of other people. And his core service offering is a day-long thing that when I've asked people who have done it, all they can say is, I don't really know what we did, but it totally changed my fucking life. That's what I hear a lot. And I've talked to probably, half a dozen people who've gone through it. Now, he's kind of like a businessy, lifey, transformational coach kind of person. And whatever it is that he does with people is affecting. And he promises people only that it will be affecting and it will shift your momentum. And that's basically my perception. This isn't in his marketing. This is my perception of his core value proposition in that, right? And I have yet to see anybody who says he didn't deliver on it. Now, his offer is different from anything that I'd ever seen. He's been offering this for a very long time. And it's like a day-long thing for, it's somewhere around $2,000, something like that. And I've watched people talk about scrimping and saving and putting money away, and he's booked months and months and months in advance. I have no idea how many of these he does a week, but I bet it's exactly the number that is sustainable for him. And he's one of the few people I've seen that does this extremely well, that throws the rule book out and says, this is how I can deliver on this one specific thing that I most want to deliver. So think about that model. Think about what you offer and whether or not your service offerings are aligning with the promises that you're making? Are you delivering? Do you even know? Do you know if you're delivering? And that's and the answer to that usually, like for most people, is I don't know, I'll have to ask my people. No, that's not actually the right answer because they've already told you. If they're not sending you referrals, you're not delivering. Period. If they're not promoting you, you're not delivering. If they're not telling people how great you are, you're not delivering. You don't need to ask them. You don't need to survey. You don't need to do more market research. You don't need to do another beta test. You need to already know. Like that's the only way. It's that simple. It really is. Like I know this sounds like kind of out of left field or complicated or something, but it's really not. If people talk about you favorably, then you have delivered on the promise that you made to them. If somebody says, I don't feel satisfied, that isn't the whole story either. Sometimes you deliver on your promise and you scare the shit out of somebody to a degree that they want their money back because they weren't ready for you to deliver on the promise you made. They want the outcome, but not the work. So remember that, this kind of leads into the idea that the customer's not always right. And maybe we'll talk about that on another podcast too. But I want to focus your attention for just a second on the fact that I mentioned earlier that this is a pathway to fulfillment. And I said I'd talk about that a little bit more. This is the reason why this is so important to work on all the way through the duration of your business and to approach your work this way is because it's one of the primary ways to avoid burning the fuck out. Because fundamentally, when you develop a service offering that you allow the tail to wag the dog, meaning you look for a problem out in the marketplace and then you jerry-rig a concept to solve that problem out of your particular cocktail of skills, you're not being proactive about your work in the world or your place in the world. You're letting the world tell you what to do instead of the other way around. You're letting potential clients tell you what to do before you've even met them. And they're going to tell you how they want you to deliver on their request rather than you telling them how you're going to deliver on your promise. Now, you do that for too long and you're going to get really bored and you're going to get really resentful of your customer base. And you're going to find yourself bitching about your customers more than you are praising them. And then you're going to burn out and quit. And I've seen it again and again and again. The people who say, I did all the right things, I got some clients, I never quite made enough money, I never got referrals, I just don't know what happened, this stuff doesn't work for me. And they throw in the towel and go get a job. When if they would have just fundamentally stuck to, this is how I want to deliver and solve a problem and make a promise that I know can solve a specific problem that people are willing to pay money for, and I'm going to do it in a way that I'm absolutely certain meets the conditions that I want to meet in order to deliver on those things. If you do those things, then you get all the things that you want. And you create a sustainable business for yourself that will continue to challenge you and feed you at the same time. So this is when you do that, it affects everything. How many sessions, if you're a coach, or how much deliverables, or how many edits if you're a copywriter, or, how much should it cost? It affects everything. It is the guiding light that when people ask me how to develop a service, I say, how do you deliver on a promise? What do you need? Start there. And then you find ways to make those two things match up. So doing this is the difference between creating a service offering and creating a leadership offering. So this is where the leadership piece comes in. There's so many questions that people bring to me all the time, or that we just hear, right? We hear them in Facebook groups. We hear them in business mixers. How do I position myself as a leader or an expert? How do I get referrals? How do I develop a service offering? How much should I charge? All of those questions are answered in the same way. How do you deliver on your promise? Are you delivering on the promise that you're making? If you are, you'd already have all of those things, right? So if you want to be a leadership brand, meaning you want to be seen as a thought leader, or, you want to write a book, you want to have a podcast, you want to, whatever it is that you want to be able to stand out as a singular in your particular marketplace, or you want to be respected as a leader if you're an employee, that's possible too. I don't know how many employees are going to listen to this, but if you are an intrapreneur, meaning you work with inside a company, the same rules apply. If you can say, I promise that I can make this happen for you, make sure you're only making promises you know you can deliver on, and then deliver on them. Why is it so hard, right? So when you have the guts to do things this way, a few things start to happen. People automatically see you as a leader when you do things differently than everyone else. It's the outlier syndrome. It's saying, I am only willing to compromise on things that I'm 100% sure I can compromise on. But how I do my life's work, how I give you what you're paying for, that's up to me. It's not up to you. It's up to me. It's up to me to have strong opinions about your work. It's up to me to voice them, and it's up to me to disagree with you and have the guts to do that. And when I say you, I mean your client, right? Whoever's sitting across from you paying the bills. They're not paying you to meet with them twice a month on a bi-weekly basis for a 45-minute session to have you, coach them through how to be more courageous in life, right? They're not hiring you for that. They're hiring you to learn how to be more courageous in life. And if you can do that in a 5-minute session 4 times a week, and that's your magic special cocktail of call cadence and duration, then that's exactly what you should do. Because your service offering, structure of it is every bit as important as your brand, as your design, as how you represent yourself in the world. And one of the best things that can happen to your business is to have people talk about you, right? Doing things differently means people will talk about you. And they'll do it organically, not because you sure looked pretty in your new photography. That's not the kind of talking about you that you want, right? You don't want people talking about you because you have a mediocre Squarespace website and you are doing things exactly the same as every other person in your industry does things. Nobody talks about that. Nobody goes, gosh, I just saw this new brewery and they have a really kind of meh brand. Right? That is not a conversation anyone in the history of the world, except maybe brand designers, have ever had, right? We notice the mediocrity. Other people don't notice the mediocrity, right? If you want to stand out and you want to be sustainable, you have to think about what are you doing? Why does it matter? What do you want to promise people? And how can you rise up to meet that, no matter what? And when you do meet it, how do you make sure that they know you met it, right? How do you follow through? How do you make sure that they understand that this is the end point, that I've delivered on my promise? You have to plan for that, right? One of my biggest goals with any client is obsolescence. I look for ways in which they don't need me anymore. And I've told clients, you don't need me anymore. We don't need to keep talking. You're good. Come back when you want to do something new, and I'll be here. There's power in that. There's loyalty in that. There's guts in that. And when you have guts, when you have the confidence to say, I can do only what I'm telling you I can do and no more, and you stop worrying about what's in your back pocket to sell them next, then all of a sudden you have a client who respects you, who thinks that what you do is incredible and unique and special. But to do that, you have to make choices. You have to make clear and confident choices. You have to get used to doing that again and again and again and again and again. And in order to make choices, you have to know how to make decisions, and you have to have a filter in which to pass those decisions. So you have to figure out what your magic is. You have to figure out what you know you can deliver on and what you can't. And that's where beta testing comes in. That's the place you should begin. When you think about doing a beta test, it's not to see if people like it or to test your structure. It's to see if you deliver on the promise that you make. That's the only thing that matters. Nothing else matters. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. This is a really, really big topic, and one that I probably will touch on again. And it's something that I really, really care about, in case that wasn't already evident. There's nothing that makes me fucking crazier than watching people overpromise and underdeliver. It's ruining the beauty of an industry. And when I say an industry, I mean this ecosystem of diverse solopreneurs who are doing everything on their own terms and trying to make a living at the same time and trying to make a difference and trying to do things differently. But in order to do things differently, we have to do things differently, right? We have to do things differently. We have to rethink the rules. We have to approach how we connect with one another as human beings, and we have to be willing to stand up for our convictions. And we have to be willing to stand up for our work and respect our work enough to design offers that make it shine, instead of designing offers that hide it underneath shine, that hide it underneath gloss, that hide it underneath manipulative language. Like, we have to be better. We have to be better at this. Otherwise, we're creating an ecosystem of people who have created mediocre jobs for ourselves and instead of having one boss, we have, 10 clients that become our bosses because we're not taking the reins. So figure out whether or not you're delivering on your promise. Ask yourself these hard questions. It matters. And with a few small tweaks, it's not actually that difficult to change how you offer what you offer, to make sure that you're not operating outside your wheelhouse and that you're only giving people exactly what they need. And nothing more. No fluff, no garbage. Don't worry about selling them the next thing. Worry about delivering on this one. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I hope you had a really good day, and I hope you have a great week. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. For more information, visit thegoodbusiness.co or yourlifesworkshop.com.